And a good Thursday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Lots and lots to talk about weather-wise as we go through the next couple of days. Finally going to break down our pretty impressive rain chances as we head into this afternoon. So obviously that is going to be a welcome sight. But then as we get into the beginning of next week, so towards the end of your 7-day forecast, we have a few question marks regarding our potential tropical systems. We'll go over the latest data with that. But first things first, let's talk about the month of September as a whole. And yes, we have been talking about it a couple times in this extended forecast. It has been very, very dry. 3 days that we've recorded rainfall in the month of September, and those amounts have all been below 1/10 of an inch. In fact, all of those numbers added up do equal 1/10 of an inch exactly for how much rainfall we've received, at least at Middle Georgia Regional Airport in the month of September. Now, some areas might have gotten a little bit more, maybe upwards to about 1 inch of rain. Overall, I would expect almost all of Central Georgia to be hovering below that average mark of 3.13 inches, which we typically see on average in the month of September. Now, back in 2004, it was a very active tropical season. Hurricanes Ivan and Hurricane Jean did dump our fair share of rain on Central Georgia, so we had totals just over 12.5 inches of rain. But it's been quite a while since we've actually seen some significant rain, or at least some considerable rain. 7/100ths of an inch is not that much rain whatsoever. We recorded that back on the 17th of September, and we've continued to go down into the exceptionally dry category. So this is a very similar graphic to what we saw in the month of July. The month of August was a very wet month, but right before that, the month of July as a whole was definitely in the very dry category. So we did get an update to our drought monitor this morning. We were talking about that yesterday. That's something we were going to be on the lookout for. And we can see that areas of some moderate drought have extended into Central Georgia, specifically the western side of Upson County. And within that category, you can see a severe drought right there on the Georgia and Alabama state line, just north of the Columbus area that stretches back over towards Auburn. So that's where you can see some areas that have really dodged the rain over the last couple of weeks. But the biggest change that we did see is now all of Central Georgia in an abnormally dry category, which is still nothing to really fret about. This just means that conditions have been a lot drier than they usually are. But this is getting into the time period where we haven't had too much significant rain. Continue to make sure that each and every day Mother Nature doesn't send you some of that much needed hydration. That, of course, you're going out, making sure that you're watering your outdoor vegetation. That goes for your lawns, your backyard plants, your backyard garden. And we can see other areas of that moderate drought creeping close to Central Georgia, down there just to the southwest of Crisp County on the southern end of Lake Blackshear. Another moderate drought category that's over towards the east, back over into South Carolina. That's coming really close to portions of Truitland and Montgomery counties, more than likely inhabiting some areas of Emmanuel County. So overall, everyone has been abnormally dry. That is definitely no secret. Speaking of your headlines, one more above average day in terms of those actual temperatures, and very thankfully, I'm not forecasting any 90s in the forecast throughout today. A select few areas may get close to that number, but overall, I think upper 80s is going to be the threshold that some areas farther down to the south and the southeast do hit high temperature wise. We have a few days of rain chances, the best of which is going to come Thursday afternoon, and we're monitoring the tropics. Like I was alluding to, as we go into the beginning of next week, there is a variety of different scenarios that could play out with our potential tropical systems. So we'll cover all of that in this extended forecast. So as we look off over towards the west, maybe into the east, you can see cloud cover beginning to be more widespread as we go across the 10 a.m. hour, transitioning into 11 a.m. this morning. That cloud cover going to limit the warm up, so that's why you will still see some areas farther over to the west that were the first to get this cloud cover. Their temperatures are still somewhere in the upper 70s, but the areas that do have some sunny skies, like Dublin that you saw with plenty of blue sky in the picture, low 80s, 82, 83 at the very warmest, another 79 over here in Swainsboro. But the big deal with these temperatures is they haven't increased that much as we've gone across the last couple of hours. In fact, most of your morning low temperatures were in the 70s here in Central Georgia, with the exception of Dublin, who was the outlier this morning, got down to around 64 or 65 degrees at the very warm, or at the coolest, excuse me. So 79 in Macon. Finally, New Orleans actually has some similar temperatures to what we're dealing with. But down in the state of Florida, that's where your warmer temperatures are going to lie. Actually, Charleston takes the cake for the warmest temperature here on Thursday in the mid-morning hours at 84 degrees. And we're going to continue to see this frontal boundary having some rain-cooled air in areas farther to the west and the southwest throughout the next couple of hours. So the dew point temperatures, they've definitely gotten an increase. It's a muggy atmosphere out there. We definitely have some noticeable moisture, even some dew point temperatures in the mid 70s the farther east that you travel. Been a while since we've seen patchy areas of that dark green shade. So across the state of Georgia, it is a pretty humid atmosphere along with South Carolina, along with Alabama, and it's mainly due to this southwest flow that we continue to have. So your numbers this morning, even despite there not being too many clouds in the picture, we're continuing to get that warmer and more humid air ushered in from the Gulf, and that's what's continuing to create this kind of ripe environment for our frontal boundary beginning to push in today. So your feels like numbers, it looks like almost everyone, I think entirely everyone, is somewhere in the 80s, and you will see areas over to the east where it's more humid, starting to flirt with that 90-degree mark. Feels like 90 in Dublin, 90 in McRae, and 90 up in Washington County in Sandersville. It's a bit breezy right now. A steady breeze anywhere from 5 to 12 miles per hour coming out of the southwest. That will continue to be the direction that the winds come out from until the actual passage of our frontal boundary, which will be sometime in the later hours of tomorrow. Then the winds will start to come in from the north and the northwest. So hour by hour, your temperature's not going to change too much. How about getting up to 83 by the time we roll into noon and staying there throughout most of the early afternoon time frame? And then as we transition into 3, 4, and 5 o'clock, your numbers are still in the low 80s, not getting much higher than that 83-degree mark. So that will be a welcome change, because here was our high temperature yesterday, 95 degrees. We were definitely holding on to that summertime heat. A little bit later than we're used to, actually 3 degrees shy of the record set back in 2019 of 98 degrees. Your average high this time of year around 86 degrees. So your actual temperatures were nearly 10 degrees above average yesterday. That's not even factoring in the feels like numbers, which got into the upper 90s and near 100 in a select few locations. Yesterday was the first day in quite some time that we've actually been above our average low this time of year. The average low dipped down to 62 degrees. We hit 63 as a morning low yesterday. Downtown Macon, I don't even think made it below the 70-degree mark this morning, but it was another day without rainfall. Here's where your year departure of rain does stand as we eagerly await some rain chances this afternoon, hovering just over 4 1/4 of an inch above where we should be this time of year. Sunrise yesterday, 7:24, sunset at 7:28. So we're beginning to get into that threshold where we have about 12 hours exactly of daylight, and then eventually the nights are going to be longer than the days. So for today, the main headline, finally some rain. Yes, I did tell you we've only recorded rain 3 days in the month of September, and each and every day has been minuscule amounts, only a couple 1/100ths of an inch. Your rain today will come in the form of showers and storms. Steady breeze out of the southwest, maybe 5 to 15 miles per hour looking back in retrospect, obviously seeing some of those sustained winds already around 12 miles per hour. The occasional gust could get above 20 miles per hour, especially with any thunderstorms that start to get some gusty winds in nature. 87 for a high temperature. And once again, yes, this is above average, but only a select few areas are going to get to that 87-degree mark, which I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second. So given the drastic uptick in the humidity, your feels like numbers, yes, your actual temperatures may be somewhere in the low to mid 80s, but the humidity is going to play a factor in the feels like numbers. Briefly popping up to that 90-degree mark. Overall, that is definitely a big win because it's nowhere near that triple-digit mark like we did see yesterday. And as we transition into the evening hours, feeling more and more pleasant down into the 80s and eventually the 70s. Right after dinner time at 79 degrees for a feels like temperature. So that rain-cooled air is definitely going to play a big factor in our forecast. Here's a look at your satellite and radar picture. Cloud cover continuing to push in and build into the forecast from the north and the northwest. A couple of scattered sprinkles and some pockets of scattered showers are approaching our west and southwestern most counties. In fact, maybe even seeing a bit of a minuscule sprinkle right there on the edge of Macon and Houston counties. And then as you look back over towards the southwest, a few spotty showers closer to Lumpkin, Georgia. But let's take a big picture view. This is all going to be a part of this frontal system that's continuing to inch slowly early through the south and the southeast. There's plenty of widespread rain chances along the Gulf Coast. We'll continue to see some of those showers move up to the north and the northeast. Remember, the winds that we have right now are coming out of the southwest. So our frontal boundary is still a couple states away, and it's not going to make its passage through today. We're looking at tomorrow for that frontal boundary to finally make its passage. So I brought my handy dandy mobile computer on wheels over here because I forgot to throw in some pause points here on future view. So let's go about a couple hours into the future, right there around 2 and 3 o'clock. Scattered showers are continuing to be more widespread as we go into that warmest sector of the afternoon. Cloud cover continues to build down towards the south and the southeast as well. So that's why I said these areas down here, maybe Lawrence, Truitland, Montgomery, Wheeler, Telfair counties, you guys have the best chance of hitting those upper 80s throughout today because you'll hold on to the sunshine a bit longer than the rest of central Georgia. Farther up to the north and the northwest, you'll see some cloud cover and you'll see some rain chances built into the forecast a bit earlier than those areas would along the I-16 corridor. So as we continue into that afternoon time frame, 5 p.m., this is when I do expect probably a couple storms to be in the forecast. Now, not everyone going to see some storms. Some areas may hear some rumbles of thunder. Along with that comes some heavy downpours and some frequent lightning. So, of course, it may get a little bit loud and a bit messy outside, and you may have some isolated wind gusts that do get above that 20-mile-per-hour threshold. We continue into the evening hours, right there around dinner time. As the sun begins to set, those temperatures will be getting cooler. Your rain chances are going to decrease day by day. This will be a common theme that you see over the next 3 days. Rain chances not completely going away. However, they are going to be a lot lighter in nature, and they're going to continue to scatter out as we go into the nighttime hours. So you'll see a lot of the rain in the picture does begin to clear out as we go to the midnight hour. And now let's flash forward all the way over into early Friday morning. Like I said, rain chances not completely out of the picture. A couple spotty showers and maybe a few drizzles are in the picture. But what you can get a glimpse of is widespread cloud cover. And this isn't the thinner cloud cover like you see back over to the west. This is fairly dense cloud cover. So this is going to do a good job of inhibiting that warm up from the first moment of sunlight tomorrow. And that's going to keep your high temperatures down throughout Friday. Now, let's transition into the late morning time period. Right there around when I'll be doing this extended forecast tomorrow. You can see widespread cloud cover, a few light showers still in the picture, but as we go into the afternoon time frame, maybe some breaks in cloud cover could lead to some spotty showers and even a couple of storms in the forecast. 5 p.m., of course, an important time on Fridays. Football Friday night tailgate happening. Many of you are going to be getting off of work, maybe heading out to the gridiron. Well, as we transition into the 7 and 8 p.m. hours, yes, there are still rain chances in the picture, but it doesn't look as widespread as what we do have in store for Thursday. So I think just bringing the umbrella and the raincoat to be better safe than sorry is going to be your best bet in order to combating some of those scattered rain chances that could be in the picture out at football games tomorrow. Then as we go into the nighttime hours past sunset, your rain chances do continue to decrease or they'll be very light in nature. But now let's go into Saturday, because Saturday's a bit of an iffy forecast, but also a very important day that we're trying to nail down. It is a big sporting weekend between the Ryder Cup, between big college football games. Lots of people going to have backyard barbecues, tailgate parties in order to watch all of those amazing sports games this Saturday. Well, how we kick off the morning, a couple hours before college game day gets started, you can see our fair share of cloud cover still lingering in the forecast, but that cloud cover will continue to fizzle out. But then we transition just past lunchtime on Saturday. I went a little bit too far, my apologies. Right there, 2 and 3 o'clock. There's still scattered showers in the picture. The frontal boundary is already passed through. You can get a good depiction of that because you can see over towards the east, that's where your more organized and your heavier rain chances are going to be. So that frontal boundary will have passed through, but we are looking at a low pressure center to establish itself along that frontal boundary, which could create some counterclockwise flow, and that in turn could usher in some moisture on the backside of this frontal boundary, just enough for a couple of scattered showers, maybe even a storm or two as we transition into your Saturday evening and nighttime frame. And once again, as we go into the overnight hours, your rain chances are going to continue to fizzle out and get a lot lighter in nature. And then as we go into Sunday, actually forecasted to be probably the one day that we really don't have any significant rain chances for the foreseeable future. So here's a look at your day one storm outlook. We saw a lot of central Georgia areas trimmed out of this with the latest update overnight. Now we just see mainly northeast central Georgia included in this level 1 out of 5 risk for some potentially strong to maybe even possibly severe weather. This just means a couple of thunderstorms going to pack a punch with some gusty winds in those localized areas, maybe 40 to 50 mile per hour winds. Frequent lightning, of course, and along with that, the subsequently following thunder, and then heavy downpours. Those are going to be your isolated pockets where you do get some heavier rainfall totals, so wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing. It's definitely a welcome trade-off. We're not looking at a substantial amount of rain to create maybe a flash flooding risk, even given how dry that we've been. Overall, I think any rain that you do receive is going to be welcomed, and obviously hopefully going to alleviate some of those dry conditions that continue to build into the forecast. But we don't have any severe weather risk as it stands right now for Friday and Saturday. Still wouldn't rule out maybe a strong thunderstorm or two being in the forecast, especially given how much humidity that we could have on tap. So let's take a look at your future view rainfall graphic. With the latest update of the graph model, we've seen some changes in these values. Once again, I still believe that most of central Georgia is going to hover probably between the ½ inch of rain mark all the way up to 1.5 inches of rain. So obviously not a whole lot of rain, but you're going to have to be on the lookout for these isolated areas where you see some of these bluish gray colors, maybe even some red colors. Those isolated areas are going to see heavy shower after heavy shower or thunderstorm after thunderstorm train over the same areas, and that can result in some localized areas that get upwards to maybe 2 or even 3 inches of rain. That's what we saw in Butler and Macon with the latest graph model. We had 2 inches of rain in Butler, 3 inches of rain up in the Macon area. But now those totals are definitely not reciprocating that idea. But you can see flashes of the red colors, the darker gray colors, and that's going to mainly be farther up to the north and the northwest. So I think for the farther up I-75 north that you go, you have a better shot at getting some higher rainfall totals. But the farther southeast, the farther that you go down I-16, that's when your rain chances aren't looking as quite as impressive. But I still think most everyone will luck out and get some rain. So over the next 3 days, the main theme will be decreasing rain chances, but along with that, some decreasing high temperatures. 87 for a high today because we still have some areas that are receiving sunlight so far, 70% chance of a shower or a storm this afternoon, and then down to 40 and 30% as we go into Friday and Saturday. I still have a bit more confidence in you seeing some rainfall throughout Friday afternoon and evening as opposed to Saturday. But once again, the cloud cover staying in the picture during those early morning hours. I mentioned how that's going to inhibit the warm up. 81 for a high temperature as opposed to 87 today, 95 yesterday. Imagine if we hit 95 on Wednesday and saw about a 14 to 15 degree temperature drop by the time we rolled into Friday. So yes, that's another very beneficial effect of some rainfall and some cloud cover. It will keep your temperatures at bay. And then 83 as we roll into Saturday. I think we'll actually get some pretty ample sunshine as we go into the afternoon. And obviously as those temperatures try to warm up, we'll have a little bit of surface moisture left, and that's going to contribute to some of those pop-up showers and maybe even a storm or two as we go into the afternoon. But overall, this is definitely a very welcome forecast over the next 3 days. Not many days I've been able to throw a thunderstorm icon, let alone even a rain chance icon on that next 3 days graphic. So as we go into your extended forecast, Sunday into Monday, still not too much of a warm up. Now, by the time we get there into the end of the weekend, I think your average high of 86 is actually going to bump down to 85 degrees. So I think these are going to be right there around average, forecasted highs of 85 for Sunday and into Monday. And taking a look at the humidity, we do see a steady downtick. So obviously, when we have these cold fronts come through, we always talk about the slightly cooler and maybe drier air that it can usher in. Well, this time, this front doesn't necessarily look to do that. It will be slightly cooler and maybe slightly less humid, but overall, I don't really buy too much stock into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, continuing to get that downtick in humidity, and I'll show you why when we pop it over to the long-range models with the next graphic. But overall, I think you should plan on maybe a bit more of a pleasant feel, but overall, this frontal boundary doesn't look to really make conditions more pleasant. It's really just going to be sending our fair share of more widely scattered rain chances in the forecast. So now let's go into the long-range models. And let's go ahead and talk about Sunday. where you can see Sunday afternoon and into the evening, it is looking like a predominantly dry day. So I think Sunday probably going to be the best day of the weekend ahead to get some outdoor plans in. There's plenty of good NFL games on that will be happening on Sunday. I know Chiefs and Ravens are playing, maybe wanting to continue all of those outdoor tailgate and watch parties into the very end of the weekend. But then as we go into Monday, things get a little bit interesting. Obviously, you see what's going on here to the south and the southeast of us. There is plenty of good agreement right now that tropical formation is going to happen, and we're going to see that potential tropical system try to brush up the Atlantic coast. Right now, good overlap amongst the GFS and the Euro. The European, kind of hard to see right here, but the blue shade is slightly north of the GFS here in green, but you can get a good indication that there is a good amount of organization indicated by that big patch of yellow and red and maybe even some pink shades. Well, as we transition into Monday afternoon, we continue to see that these models are pushing whatever tropical system this is, whether it's organized or not, onshore or really close to the coastal areas of South Carolina and North Carolina. As we continue to go into early Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, this is where agreement really does end. We're not seeing a lot of overlap anymore. The European and blue is pushing a lot of that tropical moisture farther up to the north, but the GFS has this tropical system trying to meander across South Carolina and the state of Georgia. So obviously we'd probably have our fair share of bands of tropical rain, and we'd be pretty close to whatever center of circulation is still there in the picture as we go into Tuesday afternoon. But the good news is, as these tropical systems move onto land masses, they do weaken substantially. So they obviously need to be over that warm water that we have in the Atlantic, the Gulf, the Caribbean, whatever body of water is nearby. And we continue into Wednesday, where we can see, yes, okay, if we have a tropical system move onshore, the remnants of that moisture is still going to be left in the south and the southeast. But obviously, you can see over here to the right side of your screen, there is good agreement that another tropical system is going to continue to stay out to sea, move really close to the Atlantic coast, but probably take a turn and move back out into the Atlantic Ocean. Let's go ahead and go into, let's see, Wednesday evening. Still pretty decent rain chances. Going into Thursday, you can see less and less agreement amongst these long-range models all the way to Thursday at 4 p.m. is as long as our long-range models do go. So right now we're seeing better consensus than what we did yesterday at whatever potential tropical system is in the near vicinity of us, getting really close and maybe posing some impacts. Not necessarily going to make a landfall. It is going to be possible. We're continuing to see more of a westward shift with a lot of the long-range models. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's down there and brewing in the tropics. Well, first things first, we already have two named storms. We have Hurricane Gabrielle, which is continuing to move over towards Europe, and we got Tropical Storm Umberto that did form as of yesterday. That's over to the east of this potential area that we continue to monitor that has high chances of development. 70% chance of developing over the next 2 days and a 90% chance of developing past that 48-hour window. It looks more and more likely that sometime later today into the early hours of tomorrow, we'll probably get our next named storm, which is going to be Imelda. This was as of the 8 a.m. update. Right now, it's this cluster of disorganized showers and thunderstorms around Hispaniola, specifically the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. It's going to continue to meander there for just a little bit, but then it is forecasted to move into the Bahamas, across portions of eastern Cuba and Turks and Caicos, and then right up the Atlantic coast, just to the east of Florida, probably going to send some pretty strong and pretty notable rip currents over to those Atlantic areas of Florida. So Miami, getting into West Palm Beach, all those areas that ride up the Atlantic coast, eventually up into Daytona, eventually up into Jacksonville. And what's next is going to be the coastal areas of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. So right now, just monitoring this, I think we might have seen a bit of a shift over to the east, which isn't necessarily lining up with what those long-range models did just say. But as you can see, if it continues dead up to the north, hopefully we can continue to have our frontal boundary that passes through, try to nudge this back out into the Atlantic Ocean. But speaking of Tropical Storm Umberto, it's in the near vicinity of this potential tropical system. So when you have tropical systems that are really close by, they can continue to interact with one another. Here's what the cone forecast has for Umberto. You can see that it's moving to the northwest at 8 miles per hour right now, so it's not moving at a very fast speed. It's actually not going to really kick into motion until we get sometime into Saturday and Sunday, but forecasted to steadily strengthen into a Category 1, eventually a Category 2, and then a major Category 3 hurricane by the time we roll into Sunday at 8 a.m., 120 mile per hour winds. It should maintain that major hurricane status and then maybe weaken into a high-end Category 2 storm. And right now it's forecasted to thread the needle between Bermuda and the Atlantic coast of the United States. Taking a look at some of the values with Tropical Storm Umberto as of right now, 50 mile per hour winds and 1,004 millibars for that central low pressure. So it does look like that pressure will get lower. Those wind speeds will go up. But as you can see, moving really close to that projected path of this potential tropical system, which of course the next name on the list is going to be Imelda. That's going to be the I letter name. And then as we transition past that, Jerry, Karen, Lorenzo, but we don't have any other potential areas of development that look to claim those names in the near future. So now let's go into your long-range models right here, and this is where we can get a good picture view about what's going on with both of these tropical systems. This is the European model that you see highlighted in the blue. Both these potential systems getting their act together as they move into this warm water in the western Atlantic. It does look like a better consensus that Umberto over to the east is going to gain more circulation, and it's going to potentially be a bit of a stronger storm. Well, right now the European model is hinting at the one that is potentially going to be Imelda is moving at a bit of a faster pace than what Umberto is. And then we can continue to see if this track does go the course and we do have a faster speed with Imelda trying to move up along the Atlantic coast. Imelda is going to continue to try to move onto areas of coastal North Carolina and South Carolina, while Umberto is still just falling behind a little bit. It's not quite to the finish line of the marathon. It's running a little bit behind pace. Well, if this scenario plays out, obviously tropical moisture moves onshore of the eastern United States. It does look like this potentially continues up to the north and to areas of upstate North Carolina, Virginia, up into Kentucky and West Virginia. Not a lot of that tropical moisture reaches us here in central Georgia, and Umberto continues to meander out in the Atlantic and takes that curve back out to sea, but that tropical moisture that's left with potential Imelda does kind of hang around in the picture as we go into the midweek next week. Now let's take a look at the Euro's counterpart, the GFS. Both systems continuing to gain organization, both moving at pretty similar speeds, but still Imelda running a little bit faster than what Umberto is down to the east and the southeast. Now the GFS is hinting at a potential landfall into coastal areas of South Carolina, and along with that, tropical moisture, outer bands of rain, some gusty winds could be present in central Georgia, and we continue to see that make a landfall but kind of stay put across Georgia and South Carolina, which is where we would feel more tropical impacts. But the main consensus that we continue to see is that, yes, a landfall does remain possible, but not necessarily set in stone. There are 3 different scenarios that can happen with these potential systems. Number one, they can stay far enough away from one another to where their circulation and their flow is not going to influence one another. So if Imelda does run a little bit faster, we'd look at more impacts on the east coast of the United States to be more likely, and along with that, getting some tropical impacts here in the state of Georgia, central Georgia, but really not looking at anything past some bands of potentially heavy rain and maybe some gusty wind conditions, not really looking at the full force and the full brunt of tropical activity like we did with, say, Hurricane Helene nearly a year ago. Now, what else we could see? We could see something take place that we don't normally see in the Atlantic Ocean. It's pretty rare, in fact. It's called the Fujiwara effect, where both of these systems move close enough together to where they'll start rotating one another. So say this is potentially Imelda, say this is Umberto, they're going to rotate around each other counterclockwise. That would send Umberto a little bit farther onshore to the eastern United States. Imelda would start to move out down towards the south and then the southeast back into the Atlantic Ocean. It's a very rare phenomenon to occur, like I was mentioning. We'd need to see both these systems get pretty close together in order for that to happen. And the third scenario is Umberto absorbs whatever tries to form into Imelda. It would result in a stronger storm out in the Atlantic Ocean, but then I think that would result in that staying out in the Atlantic Ocean, maybe having some impacts in Bermuda, but overall that would probably be the scenario that we're rooting for. Here's a look at the GFS models. You can continue to see that, yes, the spaghetti plots, not too many of them have whatever Imelda is moving onshore as of right now. There's more consensus and more lines out here in the Atlantic Ocean over towards the east. that both of these systems are going to try to stay out at sea and not pose too many tropical impacts down in the south and the southeast. It remains a possibility. Continue to stay monitored with it, but it's not the time to prepare whatsoever right now. It's just something to continue to be aware of. But it is worth noting that we have seen more consensus of models moving a lot of tropical moisture and having potential tropical impacts down in the southeast than what we did see yesterday. Here's the Euro model. For some reason, it's only popping up the name storm spaghetti plots. We're not getting any on Invest 94L, which is potentially Melda, but Umberto moving back out to sea. Checking in on Gabrielle really quick, maintaining Category 1 status, continuing to move over to portions of Western Europe and Northwest Africa, not posing any threats to our forecast whatsoever. So the forecast at the beginning of the week still written in pencil as of right now. We'll continue to keep you updated as we do continue to get more and more model data to get a better idea about what's going to happen. Otherwise, be on the lookout for a couple of showers, some heavy showers and some thunderstorms over the next couple of days. Just have that rain jacket and umbrella ready to go if you do need them. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you once again at 10:30 tomorrow to give you a weekend preview about your forecast.